here we are back again, and you're watching Mirador Television, which comes out of the White Hart Hotel in Lewes, East Sussex, and which, as we've been telling you all day, has been the... actually, Claire, if you take a look over my shoulder, there's the old man from the FT.
Oh, hi.
Stuart, this is Claire Barrett, who is the consumer editor of the FT.
Oh, right.
And I've just told her about your distinguished background, and she's very interested in the fact that you're here in your dotage, helping us with this television operation.
Right.
Yeah,
So-
we're back in Bracken House now. So
Well, yeah, it's really quite funny, isn't it? Because the front of that is listed.
yeah,
Okay, so when it was sold, the back of it was like a Hollywood set. You know, all that building was held up by a great big thing, and it was all glass little offices, and it was really quite funny actually. Yeah,
Yeah.
But it was a very good career I had with the FT.
wow,
36 years.
brilliant. I'm nearly halfway up to your mark, and intended.
Right. When I started off, when I got the job as a journalist, I was Plantation Shares editor.
Oh wow,
Because back in the day, you see, Newton was just interested in the city and so forth and so on. So we only had one forum page.
gosh,
And eventually, when Newton sort of passed, and we had all the other editors, we had the forum page, and it was only half a page because the ad was taking up the other page. So the entire world had half a page. And I used to be foreign the news editor, and it wasn't much of a job because there was only
You
half a page.
page.
of news. Yeah.
I should tell you, Claire, because we're here to push your book, but Stuart is an author, and he and I were in Northern Ireland together, although we didn't see much of each other when we were there, but he has written a rather splendid novel called The Friends of Rattling Island, and that's available, and at the moment, he's just staggered into the library because he's writing a second book.
Wow. Well, good luck.
Well, actually, Claire, no, the book is my biography, self-biography, and a lot of it is about the FT in the early days. In fact, most of it is that because my life, once I got the job there, the reason I got the job is I got ADHD, you see, because I was one of the first undergraduates at Sussex University, and I didn't get a very good degree, and I was working in London on a building site. And there was a Daily Telegraph, which I never read, lying around, and it said, "Researcher wanted for the Financial Times Library, must be a graduate, editorial prospects."
Wow.
And I applied for it, and then my ADHD came in, and I kept on talking and talking and talking. They said, "Oh yes, you've got the job, Christopher."
Right. Well, we'll turn to Claire Stuart, because she is the consumer editor of the Financial Times, and she will be on deck at 11:20 on Sunday in the All Saints Centre, because she's written a book, or I suppose several books. I'm looking at the bookcase behind you. If you've written all those, Claire, you're doing very well.
No,
But of course,
they're all my murder mystery collection.
one of the things that is very consuming everybody today is exactly the sort of thing that you write about as consumer affairs editor, and that is the cost of living and inflation and so on and so forth. And Stuart and I sometimes sit here and talk about how confusing it can be, because at the moment they say that the prices of goods are coming down, but that inflation is not contained, which contradicts each other. So I think we're very happy to have an expert, and perhaps you can tell us the thrust of your book and what you're going to be talking to people about on Sunday.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thanks, Keith, for the introduction. As you said, my book is quite self-explanatory. It's called "What They Don't Teach You About Money." That isn't my actual bank card, but this is premise of the book about how we're spending money, how we're saving money, how we're trying to invest money, and how there's just so much of a focus on money at the moment. As you say, you can't escape it. It's in the news all the time. Inflation, fears of recession, mortgage interest rates, all the rest of it. And a lot of people find it incredibly overwhelming, want to hide under a rock, and would probably never think about buying a money book, or certainly coming to hear a money expert speak. And to all of those people, I would say you're exactly the kind of people who I would love to meet on Sunday, because I have made my mark on the journalistic world by explaining stuff about money in a way that normal people can understand, because it's one of the most horrifically complicated industries, the financial industry. And I think that's one of the biggest problems. It really puts people off from engaging with their money and getting over especially the emotional blockages we have. And the biggest one that we have at the moment is fear and anxiety. So I really hope to be delivering some good and reassuring and calming news at the festival. And importantly, I will be taking people's questions. So it will be an interactive session. I want people to tell me what they're worrying about so that I can help them.
Yeah, that's good. No, I've actually, since I've got my own, since I'm become an expert on energy matters.
Right.
So I program, and I really was ahead of the game, wasn't I, Keith?
Yes, indeed.
After the newspaper business, I've got my own websites, and one is called It's called Green Barrel, about renewable energy, and I made myself an expert in the energy crisis because I knew it was coming, because I've been researching it. I mean, the whole energy crisis really started when Richard Thatcher privatized the energy companies. Do you remember? Right. That was.
I don't remember, but I think the more important thing for people to focus on at the moment is what's going to happen after June, when we see the government's energy price guarantee run out. And the good news that's been reported in the FT and other outlets this week, that analysts
is that the gas price has gone down.
And it's not reflected in our bills yet. But the fact that any bill, frankly, is coming down when the prices of so many other things, including the cost of the supermarket shop, just keeps relentlessly going up and up, is something that we should definitely be celebrating. But
the sort of thing that I talk to Stuart about is I go into the supermarket, and I'm not a very good shopper, but I see something that I was buying at £1. And then with the cost of living crisis, it's gone up to £1.50. And then when I go the next time, it's gone up to £1.75. I don't see much evidence of things coming down. So what's your good news for that sort of thing?
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, prices aren't coming down. And I do spend a lot of time in the book explaining the kind of basic concepts like inflation. Like, people say, oh, inflation has fallen by a fraction of a percent. That means prices have come down. It does not mean that prices have come down. It means that the increase in prices is happening year on year at a slightly lower rate. But there's a lot of misinformation. Every time we talk about things like, GDP, how much the economy is growing, interest rates, why interest rates have to go up to fight inflation. There's a lot of people watching the news who are thinking, like, actually, I don't really know why these things are happening. There was a big survey a while ago done actually about the BBC's economic reporting, but frankly, it probably could have been done about all economic reporting, saying that people just didn't understand what the term fiscal meant. Now, I mean, it means there are lots of issues with tax at the moment that are affecting working people, people in retirement, people with pensions. The tax system is incredibly complicated to understand. It's something that I actually explain in my book using the metaphor of Nando's, which is something that everybody understands and many people quite like. It's less threatening and confusing. There aren't a lot of scary numbers, figures and charts and graphs in my book, which you would obviously get if you read some of the articles that I write in the Financial Times, because I don't want to scare people off. I want to explain things in a way that people can understand, but also in a way that they can take on board and think, right, this is something that I can actually do. about the cost of living crisis. This is a lever that I can pull. This is something that's going to happen to me in the future, or if I don't do this, I'm at risk of falling behind. But it's getting the information out there so that people can actually understand it and feel better informed about making decisions with their money and with their family's money, rather than just feeling battered by the economic headwinds, putting their head into the sand. The ostrich. That's one of the 6 personality types that I come up with in the book in terms of like how we emotionally deal with money. The ostrich is one. The goblin is another. I'm one of those, somebody who likes to hoard cash. Of course, inflation is hurting us, even though interest rates on savings accounts did tick up again yesterday. Another one, which lots of people empathise with, is the spreadsheet slave, somebody who tries to control every last penny of their budget, which can be a very good thing at the moment. Certainly, there's lots we can learn from people who dream in Excel, as I define them. But also, if you go too far down that route of trying to control your money and not enjoy spending on it, that's one of the purposes of working for a living. We do want to go out and to be able to spend money, and I'm certainly not the kind of money expert who would chide anybody from say you've got to stop buying coffee or give up having avocado on toast. If that's what you want to spend your money on, fine by me, but just enjoy it and get the maximum amount of value out of it when you do.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, can I tell you, apart from being an expert, I became an expert on pensions. In fact, I was a member nominated fund for the FT pension fund.
Right.
And the FT pension fund is a very, very
Should
good
be nice
one.
to him.
Yeah, right.
I'm not in that one. I'm in the less generous one.
You've got the defined benefits one, haven't you?
No, this is part of the problem with pensions, Keith. It's written in a language that nobody understands, apart from pointy head boffins in the city. So what we're talking about, the 2 main types of pension: defined benefit, that's the old fashioned kind where you got an income for life when you retired, often that died with you. And then defined contribution, or DC, they're what pretty much every single worker in the UK
Right,
has.
no, but the other one is the final salary pension, isn't it?
No, that's the same as defined.
No, it's not the same. It's not the same. It's completely
it's
different.
It's the same building blocks. I don't think we should go into the semantics of what makes these pensions slightly different from another, because the fact is very, very few people, young people, especially in the workforce, have them. Nobody seems to realise that pension saving for the future is very much, the risk is on us as workers. If we're not saving enough for our retirement, there isn't going to be some magic wand that will get us out of trouble. But there are so many problems going on in the here and now in people's finances that thinking about the next 10 years, let alone what might happen in the next 20 or 30 years, can be a real issue. But I do want to talk to people about pensions and explain a little bit more about how they work. Many people don't realise that they're free money that you could be getting from your employer. That's been one of the biggest pieces of feedback that I've had from this book from young people who've read it. They've said, I didn't understand that if I gave up making contributions into my company pensions, I was actually voting for a pay cut. And in fact, as I'll explain on Sunday, paying in a little bit more can actually be your quickest way of getting a pay rise. And frankly, knowing these things, that goes back to the title of the book, What They Don't Teach You About Money. When people find out this stuff, they're just like, why isn't this?
Yeah, can I just interrupt you there? Because there is a difference between a defined benefits and a final salary. One difference is you can realise a lump sum. If you've got a final salary, you cannot take out a lump sum. It's there for life, and it's one of the best investments you can have, because it goes up to 3.6%.
It's a piece of history. It's a fragment of history.
I can't realise lump sum. There is going to be.
Hang on, you're both talking together. Yeah, it's Claire.
My point is that those kinds of pensions, yes, if you were in the workforce and retired 20 years ago, then you would have been more likely to have a pension that would give you these guaranteed benefits and was much more generous than the ones that people have now. I mean, the target audience for my book are people who are in the workforce now building up money, and there are so many pressures for the younger generation on their finances. People who are aged sort of 18 to 40 are the people who I really imagine being the target audience for this book. It will help older people, of course, in many different ways, because we could all do with learning more about our finances. But the fact of the matter is, there's nothing to educate people about pensions, about saving for the future, about investing. Lots of people got into investing, for example, under lockdown, just because they had time and money on their hands, and lots of people have come a cropper. So it really is a primer, this book, in good, sensible money advice, which makes sense for most people who are struggling to get by at the moment, but in the future can see that actually there are things that they can put in place, whether that's choosing the right product to save for a property, understanding how to get the most out of pensions, and also understanding all of these trip ups and quirks within the tax system that are really affecting people on a day-to-day basis.
Now, one of the things about offering advice is that quite often people are not that keen on taking it. Do you find a resistance to what it is that you're saying?
No, I've never found that. I've found it exactly the opposite, Keith, that actually people want to talk to somebody human about money and be able to ask questions, that they're very confused by the amount of free information that is available out there on the internet. You know, we're very lucky in the UK. We've got some excellent personal finance sections in the newspapers, not just the FT, but the Daily Mail is absolutely fantastic. Mail on Sunday. Very, very good campaigning journalism going on there. And of course, Money Saving Expert, which is a free resource stuffed with information for people, from anything to do with, you know, fixing your mortgage again to looking at energy bills. But the problem for people now is that they're overwhelmed. They've got to find out all of this stuff for themselves. They often just want an answer to a quite simple question, but it's very hard to find these things out online. And so what I normally find when I do events, because I've done events for a long time before writing this book, is that people open up and they want to be able to learn more about their finances in a non-judgmental way. They like to ask questions. They're not in front of their friends or their family members or their partners necessarily. So people open up, and what goes on in the room stays in the room, I should say. But also, above all, because we don't want to expose these gaps in our knowledge that we have about finance. I mean, people who work in finance, frankly, can be some of the worst offenders for this. But I constantly say to people, there are no stupid questions about money. You might think it's a stupid question. I really should know this, Claire, but could you put me straight? But the only stupid thing is not asking those questions, because if we remain ignorant, if we put off making decisions, then that is going to hurt us in a different way. So it's really a big teach-in. I would encourage people to come down, take part, and don't be afraid to ask questions. That's why I try to devote as much time as possible, because we just never have time to answer them all.
No. Now, you deal with this sort of stuff on a day-to-day basis in the paper. What do you find is the biggest concern that people come to you? I mean, you've said, okay, you're very worried about the pension situation and so on. But is that reflected in when people are coming to you, or are there other things which take precedence?
I think really for older people, worrying that their pension isn't enough, and won't be enough, and how they can work that out and think about that, because the FT's print readers tend to be older. I present a podcast for the FT, which is my main job there. It's called Money Clinic, and the listeners of Money Clinic tend to be younger. So their biggest area of concern is the housing market. How are they going to ever afford to buy a house, and what kind of products could help them to do that? How mortgages work, what's going on with mortgages in the property market. People who've already bought a house, of course, are worrying about what they should do with their mortgage when it expires. We've got around 1.5 million people who have got a fixed mortgage that will come to an end this year, who face paying hundreds of pounds more a month. So there's lots of anxiety about that. And again, you've got to make a decision. Do you go for a tracker? Do you go for a fix? If you go for a fix, do you go for a 2-year? Do you go to a 5-year? And lots of people just feel that they're not capable of understanding all of the options and making the right decision. That puts a lot of pressure on them. I mean, the thing that's really bothering young people who aren't on the property ladder, of course, is the escalating cost of renting privately, which is a huge issue. We've done lots of things on the podcast about your rights as a renter. That's an area I continue to write about and campaign in. And I'm always interested to hear about people's own experiences, because that really informs my journalism and helps me to to hold business leaders and people in the industry to account. So even if we can't come up with solutions to some of these problems, it's still very, very helpful to talk about them and to fully understand what's going on, so I can reflect that in the pages of the pink paper. But more than anything, a topic that people really, really like to talk about is how to talk about money with their partner, how to talk about money with their family, how to talk about money with maybe adult children who may be asking for some inheritance to be passed on early, or maybe the person with the money is thinking, actually, this is something that I would like to do. Because as a nation, we're rubbish about talking about money. We attach all kinds of emotional issues to it, and I spend the start of the book and the end of the book looking in real detail about this. And I even interviewed and got fantastic advice from a psychotherapist who specializes in money therapy. You know, she talks to people and to couples increasingly who find that disagreements about money are a big block for their relationship. People who feel also individually that bad money habits are taking over their life. That could be something really serious, like a gambling problem, or it could be something that is still serious but perhaps less understood and less well talked about, like a shopping addiction. We made a podcast about shopping addiction about 4 or 5 months ago, and the amount of response that I got from that, from people who were suffering in silence and said, this is a real problem for me, it's ruining my finances. People don't take it seriously, so I was really glad to hear it addressed on the podcast. I was absolutely staggered.
Let me ask you this, going back to the rental situation. This just before lockdown. I mean, Lewes particularly is even the smallest house costs a fortune. But what we found was that some, I shouldn't say all, because there are some good real estate agents here, but were actually trying to get people out of rental agreements, to get them out, so that in fact what they could do is re-rent it.
Yeah.
And boost up the prices. Now, to me, that seems terribly unethical. Am I just being a silly, if you excuse the expression, moral old fart?
No, I don't think you are. I mean, there are very clear rules that landlords have to follow in the private lettings market. The problem is that a lot of them are either not aware or deliberately flout them, as you say, and the tenants are the least likely people perhaps to be able to defend themselves. We've also got this problem at the moment with the government repeatedly promising to ban so-called no-fault evictions, these Section 21. So you could do something, maybe you complain to your landlord about the fact that heating and hot water is on the blink, and they just think, oh, problematic tenant, we'll give them a Section 21. We'll evict them, we'll get somebody else in who's less likely to complain, and we'll pay a higher rent. And with the problems in the rental market at the moment and the extent of demand and how rents have increased, it's very easy for landlords to do that. But then on the other side, because I'm sure we will get some buy-to-let landlords who are coming to the talk, lots and lots of people were encouraged by past governments to invest in buy-to-let, because let's face it, we need landlords, we need a thriving private rental sector in this country. And they're now finding that with all of the recent tax changes, the hikes to mortgage interest rates, which is increasing their costs, and then all of this kind of environmental legislation that's coming in about EPC certificates, how your energy performance certificate for your property has to be up to a certain standard next year, so people are having to sink more money into properties anyway. It actually is an investment. It's not performing well for them. That's why we're seeing lots of people actually wanting to get out of buy-to-let altogether. And sell up, because it's just not something that's working out for them. Now, on the one hand, you might say, well, great, this is releasing properties that first-time buyers could buy and live in instead of renting. But for many of them, it's just making renting more unaffordable, because the pool of landlords is shrinking. And lots of people who are paying a high rent, if they don't have a deposit, then that's the the crucial problem for them, that's the biggest barrier for them to get on the housing market. Now, we've seen very interesting product release this week by Skipton Building Society, which is 100% mortgage. There's about 14 other different 100% mortgages on the market, which might surprise you, given what the problems we had in 2008. But this particular one has hit the headlines because it doesn't require any kind of parental guarantor. It just needs you to show that you've paid your rent on time for the last 12 months, that you have a good credit score, and crucially, you can pass the affordability test for the money that you want to borrow. And then you could borrow 100% of the property value. So again, wonderful to see this innovation from within the property market, although some people are saying, it's quite a risky product if you're borrowing the entire value of your property, and then we see a fall in house prices. It could tip you into negative equity. You could own an asset and a debt on that asset that's actually bigger than the value of what you could sell it for. But I'm very, very happy to talk more about the property market and all of these things on Sunday, and answer people's questions, whether they're renters, homeowners, landlords, people who want to sell, people who want to buy. We welcome everyone.
Well, let me remind people, it is that the All Saints Centre, and Claire is appearing at Saturday at Sunday, sorry, yes. Oh gosh, you mustn't give out the wrong information. I've got a whole list here. Here we go. At 11:20.
That's right. And I'll
right.
happy to sign books if you've bought one from somewhere else. Bring it down. Happy to do that. Look forward to meeting as many of you as possible, and it promises to be a fab event. And thanks for having me.
Well, if I may say so, Claire, I find you very articulate, and you've outlined a number of things. I mean, you've opened my eyes. Now, I was at the other end of the finance market. I was a Reuters journalist, but we dealt with all this stuff, which, as you say, a lot of people don't understand. And I have to say that quite often we didn't either. But certainly at the consumer end, you've been very articulate, and I would urge people to go along and listen to you, and certainly buy your book. But I was going to say to you is Mirador is very small. Our resources are very small, but we do punch above our weight. And perhaps you would agree to come back as a guest in a month or two, and continue and follow some of the things that you find important to impart. Because we'd love to have you. You're a most attractive lady, and you speak beautifully, and you do make it so that people understand. And I think that that's terribly important today.
Oh, well, how can I refuse? And if you want to keep up with me in the meantime, before I come back, I'm on Lorraine every Wednesday, although I've got 3 weeks off because I'm just about to head up to the Outer Hebrides for a holiday. But you can catch me there. Also, I'm on Instagram. I'm at Claire B. You can see how I spell my name. My handle's at the end. I've put all of the things that I get up to, little takes on the news, because often people hear the news and they think, what does that actually mean? So I try and bridge the gap that way by saying this is what it actually means in a quick way that means you can listen to it and then just get on with the rest of your life, because we shouldn't spend all of our hours in our day worrying about money, dealing with money. It's very overwhelming, but it's something that I really hope I can help people to deal with and then get on with life. That's the idea.
Well, I most certainly think that you are. And anyway, we've got your email. So you can't easily get away from us.
No, I look forward to coming back, and as I said, really excited about Sunday, and do come down, and it'd be wonderful to meet many of you.
I hope that you get a full house. I'm sure you will. Actually, when it comes to books and reading and so on, Lewes is rather better than the average. So I think it's a good place to have a speakers festival. But we look forward to having you in the future, and I hope that everything goes well on Sunday. It is possible that you may see us floating around
Well, I rather hope so.
Sorry.
I rather hope so.
Yeah, well, we do have a couple of things, and we work very closely with Mark, and we like to make sure that he gets plenty of publicity, but also it's nice for people to have a wider audience. Okay, we're not BBC, we're not ITV, but we do get to 7,000 or 8,000 of influencers, as it were, the LinkedIn type people. So it's worthwhile having a chat, and I hope they'll do so in the future.
I certainly will.
And for the moment, though, we will say toodle pip, and thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Bye.
Bye.
Okay, a very articulate young lady, and I'm very happy that she joined us. And what a day we've had, and we've got some more stuff to come, but later on today, because we need to take a little break. We've been here since 7 o'clock this morning, and my bum is getting sore. We will see you a little later in the day. So for the moment, there's plenty of toodle pips. Bye.
Thank you.